Happy Friday, everyone. It's afternoon today in Paris. Welcome to my second LinkedIn Live called Lunch and Learn session, focused on HR and people analytics topics. We will be together 1 hour. It's afternoon here in Europe, 3 a.m., 2 a.m. for London, and 7 a.m. in US for Salt Lake City. It's the perfect moment to take a break, full up, and dive into a conversation that will shape the future of work. This is a space for learning, conversation, collaboration. So feel free to share your thoughts and questions throughout this session. Don't forget, this discussion will be recorded. If you miss anything, you can catch up later. Now let's dive into the agenda. We'll exploring one of the most pressing conversation in today's workplace: work from home, return to office, and I'm really thrilled to have two incredible experts joining us: George Kremis, HR strategy and thought leader, semi-retired as he called himself, uh, and the expertise. George, do you hear us? Welcome. How are you? Oh.
Hello to you. Sorry, I had to just have a look. I had a parcel posted through the door. Always happens, doesn't it?
Welcome, George. Also, we have with us. It's an honor, and really delighted to have Dave Ehrlich, professor at Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, partner at RBL Group, and widely recognized as the father of modern HR. He has published over 200 articles and book chapters, or over 30 books. LinkedIn Top Voice. I think this is the only common, title that he have with me, and the passion with HR and analytics. Good morning, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Nicholas. It's such an honor. I've followed you every day for 2 years and made comments almost every day. You are my reflection daily moment. And George, thank you. We've gone back and forth for over 3 years now. So for me, it's a privilege to be with both of my very, very, very good LinkedIn friends.
Thank you so
Likewise,
much.
it's a privilege for me to be with both of you as well. I mean, Dave, you know that I follow you anyway, and I learn so much from you. The same from you, Nicholas. I mean, your daily insights are really, really thought provoking, and it's good to have things like this to sort of focus your mind.
Thank you so much. It's incredible, opportunity to have both of you in this, and LinkedIn, help us, to have this conversation both together during this 1 hour. 1 hour, we will have, let's before going to the directly to the subject. I would love to see, where our attendees of this, discussion are coming from. I would like to put your location in the comments. We love to see the global reach of this discussion. Let's dive into the subject now before going, more. As businesses adapt to the post-pandemic world, the way we work has shifted permanently. Some thrive in the remote environment, while others find value in being back in the office. But here, the real question: has hybrid work truly revolutionized productivity, or have we simply created a new set of challenge? Most companies have come to an accepted norm regarding hybrid and remote work. How has this shift impacted performance, culture, and retention? That's exactly what we will unpack today with Dave and George. And so let's see what's insight and outcome you can give from that. If you have any question, drop your burning question in the comments, and we will try to answer during this live session. So I see, a lot of people are coming from different parts of the world, from India, from UK, from Dublin, from Australia, from Glasgow, from Brazil. Welcome everyone to this conversation. We are Friday, Dave, George. Employees have noticed those that they are in the office that there is less and less people in the office on Friday. But also, some researchers that I'm showing here from GLL has, and I shared in my LinkedIn, that have noticed that the peak attendance trends are emerging with most people preferring work on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Same trends has observed since 2022. Monday and Friday office attendance may continue to lag as employees often value flexibility around long weekends or prefer starting and ending their week remotely or better work-life balance. But organizations embrace creativity and intentional workplace culture could transform them into high-value workdays rather than empty office days. My question is very simple now, for you both. Is will Monday and Friday office spaces remain quieter, and what can employers do? So Dave or George, if you would like to start.
George?
Well, I was going to say that I'm not surprised that people opt for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the office because, of course, it gives them a long weekend. Albeit that, if they're working remotely on a Monday and Friday, then it doesn't really matter when they work. But if you're talking working a 3-day week, then it makes sense that it would be a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because then people get the long weekend, more time with family, and more time to look, follow their pastimes. So I'm not really surprised at that.
I would say the same. I mean, this is pretty. I mean, to me, this doesn't take a lot of discussion. It's pretty obvious. This is where people would want their flexibility.
Exactly, Monday and Friday. So both, you think that this trend will continue during these coming years?
I'd say yes. Yes.
I would say yes as well.
That's not complicated.
No.
Great. Thank you for both for your thoughts about that. Let's go to the second. I can say again, it's a trend. It's undeniable. Here, people are working remote today, with the share of full-time and part-time employees who work fully or partially remotely dropping to 40%, a 4-point decline since 2022. So as you see in this graph, the full on-site has increased, fully remote has decreased. This is a trend. This is a trend that we see in all the research that I'm searching and sharing in LinkedIn. Any comments about this trend you would like to add, both?
Looking at it from the capability side, I'm trying to remember. Peter Drucker said knowledge management would have a major effect on the structure of an organization. And of course, if you're then putting people into individual silos, which basically is what you're doing when you're bringing about remote working, then you start losing things like implicit learning, the learning that's normally picked up in the workplace, the unstructured learning from listening to people, watching people. Yes, but people are still learning, even if they're working remotely. But then there has to be a different thought process, both from the employer and the employee. And from the employee's side, it's very much a case of, whereas normally they would naturally pick up this learning, they're now learning from people like customers, maybe suppliers, people they know in a job that's much like their own. and even through their own intuition and through their own innovation and creativity. But what they then have to do, which they don't normally have to do in a normal work situation, is to identify what learning needs to be passed on to others, and also to put that learning into context. How was it learnt? What were they doing when it was learnt? How did they use it? And with AI coming in as well, that's another area where people are going to be picking things up. But again, it needs to be put into context. So there needs to be good communication and collaboration in which to do that. And it's not just employees within the team leaders as well need to pick up on all the learning that has gone on, and also to put that into context. But when they put it into context, they need to know how that learning might bring about change, not only in their own team, but across the organization, and pass that on to other team leaders and other departments. So there's a lot to think about there.
Thank you so much. Dave?
I don't know what Dave feels about that.
No, I would agree with that. I wish we could go back. 2022 was COVID. There was a requirement to be flexible, to work outside. 2024 is post-COVID. We haven't seen that much change, to be honest. We've seen some. I wish we could go back 10 years. I think flexible work has been around for a long time. When I started teaching at the university, my wife was doing her PhD, and we had 2.5 children. And so the agreement was that I would not go to my university office, but work from home. I've always worked from home. Welcome to my office. I don't think this is new. I think it's a common thing. And I think, George, you've laid out nicely. There's pros and cons to where we work. And I think we see some of those. I think that pattern is going to continue. You said as you began, Nicholas, that we're seeing the variability is getting less. We're seeing that people are doing their hybrid work, and I think a lot of it depends on the job. Right now, you're seeing 3 of us. Nicholas, I don't know if you're in an office, but two
I
of
am.
us are clearly at home, because the job we're doing it's a knowledge job. It doesn't require the physical requirement of many jobs. I remember at the time in COVID going to a barber, and I need to go again. And he said, I don't have the luxury of working from home. I cut hair. And so it really depends on the job. But great. I see we're just getting into it. The point I'd like to make is there's a lot of discussion. And so it's not new, point number 1. Point number 2, there's a lot of discussion about where we work. Are we office? Are we home? Are we in a coffee shop? Are we on an airplane? I think it's the wrong question. I think the real question is, how does the work we do create value for someone else? In theory, what George and I and many others do is we think. In fact, I found I got less work done sitting in my office at the university than I did sitting at home in a comfortable chair. And so the question is, where do you work? And I think the mindset used to be, and again, this comes from my mother, my father. I get up in the morning, I go to work, I come home from work, and work was a place. Today, I think the boundary of work is not a physical location. I think the boundary of work is how much value are you creating for someone else? And if you're creating value for someone else, nobody much cares. I'm going to bet, Nicholas, that many of your incredible posts don't come from the office. They come from, and in fact, one of the things some of the CEOs are saying, everybody has to go back to work. Everybody has to, and they send out edicts. And my question to them would be, where did you send that from? Were you in your office? Were you on an airplane? Were you in a hotel? Were you at home? And I'm betting many of those edicts, all our employees must go back to work. That edict is probably not sent from an office. It's probably sent from a remote location. So I think the question, the boundary of work for me is, what do I do at work that will create value for somebody else? And George and I have agreed on this so strongly. And the someone else is a customer. Will my work help a customer be more satisfied and connected to the company? That's the question I'm intrigued with.
Absolutely.
I think possibly one of the better ideas is hybrid rather than completely remote. And the reason I say that is because it's great. Like we can talk here. There's only 3 of us. But when you get a lot of people on, say, something like Zoom or that sort of software, people do tend to sort of quieten down. They don't, they're not normally happy to sort of break into a conversation. And it always seems a little bit false for me. Whereas if you can bring somebody in just for one day a week to sit them down and say, listen, what have we all learned over the past week? You know, can we, and then put it into some sort of context, and you'll find that people are more open. That's what I've found. But the problem is, and I think the question I would put is, do employers really understand how to manage both remote and hybrid working? And I'm not sure they do. And I think maybe this is part of the reason why we're seeing more people actually brought back into the office full time. You know, I'm not saying that's the case with everybody, but I just get the feeling that it may be the case in some circumstances that this is why we're seeing more people sort of move back into the office.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, George. You made really a summary of the discussion, really in few words, but and few discussion. But I would like to come back to productivity. Reason that maybe that's central to us. Some researchers have identified the green status effect. This term describes the habit of keeping work messaging application constantly open, showing a green active status to suggest active engagement in work. Doesn't mean active again. Doesn't mean active that you are working. You can be active, but you can talk with your employees. 2/3 of employees of remote worker in this survey that I have shared already, in LinkedIn, and both of you take that this is a new term for both of you, green status effect, and for me as well, it was new. They have, so they have said that such behavior from the necessity to demonstrate productivity and commitment to colleagues, to the manager, especially since remote work environments frequently lack concrete performance indicator. The question that maybe we need to ask is this green status effect is redefined productivity is perceived, and should visibility matter more than actual result in today's work culture? I'm really keen, to know your thoughts about that.
There's a, uh, you're going to get to know me a little bit. There's a American television show that may or may not have been seen around the world called Seinfeld. It's old. One of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld was George, who's kind of a sidekick, goes and his car at the office is broken. And so people show up early in the day and George's car is there. So they said, George must be at work. They leave late at night. His car's still there. And they say, George must still be at work because his car's broken down. George concluded that he didn't need to go to work at all. All he needed to do was leave his car in the parking lot. That's this effect. It's really funny. It's now the headline, and so yeah, I think it's gone on before. The headline is: if you come to work in hybrid, as George said so well, don't do work at the office that you could have done at home. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I go to work and I do what I could have done at home. Go to work at the office to connect, that not just to be seen, that the productivity comes when 1 + 1 = 3, when we interact with each other and we create something new. So I just, by the way, I'll finish the Seinfeld episode. You never will have seen it. So George didn't even go to the office because he said the car tells people I'm at work. So he went to his girlfriend's house and spent the week at his girlfriend's house. I mean, it's a funny story, but and I learned that because people at university would say, Dave, you're not in the office. And I said, I'm in the office to teach, but look at my productivity. I think we measure productivity not by activity, but by outcome. And the productivity is high because I'm writing in different places. So I think it's not a new idea. I think it's funny that people go to have FaceTime. They should go to the office to do work they cannot do at home as well, which George talked about, which is connection, collaboration, mentoring, building the culture. That's why we come to work.
Amazing. One comment has sounds like a form of presenteeism.
I
Absolutely.
think if I was going to sum that up, I would say that you can be productive working remotely, but does that enhance performance? And I think the performance will come through perhaps that one day in the week where you go into work and you actually go face to face with people, collaborate with people, put things into context, learn, develop, maybe even make new contacts that can help with your development. And it's not just the development of the employee, it's also the development of the organization, because out of that sort of development you get growth for both. So you need to look at that. If you're going to bring people in, it's got to be used for the right reasons. Dave's absolutely right there. you know Use it to enhance development, use it to enhance growth, use it to produce value. Don't just bring people in to do work that they could have done at home. That's pointless.
Wonderful. Wonderful. The, there was another, findings about productivity overall in office worker. They compare in office and remote workers. When it comes to who's more productive overall, in office workers spend around 1 hour more socializing than remote counterparts. And while remote workers spend that time on work related tasks and responsibilities. And the question come to me is, does collaboration and engagement outweigh the productivity trade-off? Or it's a definition of productivity shifting in today's workforce?
George has done some great writing on productivity.
Yeah. Um, I hear the word productivity so much, but productivity on its own does not add value. I could sit here and I could be typing away. You wouldn't know what it is I'm typing. I could be typing anything. You know, um, Productivity on its own, it means absolutely nothing. It's got to be tied in with the learning culture as well, and it's got to be tied into performance. I'll tell you a little story very quickly. I was talking to a software developer. He actually owns his own company. He has two teams that work for him, and he actually had a consultant come in and talk about productivity. And the suggestion was that if he, um, instead of co-locating the two teams as he had done, if he separated them, there would be more productivity because they wouldn't be talking to each other, and there wouldn't be time lost. Unfortunately, what he found was that by doing that, he lost the communication and collaboration between the teams, and the actual performance dipped. So, as much as you can have productivity, if you haven't got the performance that goes with it, it means absolutely nothing. Because when people had a problem in one team, they could turn to the other team to try and sort that out. And as soon as the two teams were separated, all that collaboration just went. So, of course, he knocked the wall down and brought the two teams back together. So, I think that was a lesson learned.
Wonderful, George. Dave?
My view on the right hand side, the benefit of being in the office is not always today, and it's soft. Somebody has said the soft skills matter more. You've done research on that. You presented on that from Davos and others. And the soft is hard. And so on the right hand side, Tom Peters and others said you do management by wandering around. Well, you can't wander around remotely. And so I think on the left hand side, if we're going to maintain connection, I call it management by checking in. One of the leaders I worked with, she had 8 or 10 employees. She said, I check in with every employee every week for 5 to 10 minutes where we don't talk about work. We talk about our 5-year-old daughter. We talk about our retirement. We talk about what we're doing outside of work. I think the challenge with remote work is to maintain that connection, and to maintain the sense of community. And as George and others have said, the risk of remote work is people don't feel connected. They don't feel connected, and so they're less likely to stay. The glue that keeps you together is those things on the right hand side. When you have a meeting, when you have lunch, when you go wander in, that's the glue that binds us. On the left hand side, the remote work, we and hybrid even, we sometimes lack that glue. And some of the research has shown that people are who work full time remote or heavily remote, hybrid of some sort, they're less likely to stay, especially in a new company. During COVID, I worked with some companies that grew rapidly because of the industry they were in, and they were all remote. Well, guess what? They all left because as soon as the market changed, there wasn't this connectivity, there wasn't this kind of culture or unity, and that's the risk. So on the right hand side, management by wandering around is a great idea. Left hand side, management by checking in becomes equally critical so that people feel connected to each other.
Brilliant, brilliant.
One company on the left hand side did a pizza party. So the company ordered pizza for every one of their employees, and they'd sit in front of the whatever technology, the Zoom or Teams, and have pizza together and talk about their day. I think that's kind of cool. Uh, anyway, that's the checking in stuff on the left hand side becomes so critical. The soft is hard.
Wonderful. We have so many comments also about this, what you said exactly about the key performance KPIs as well. What key performance or OKR can be a specific company use to measure remote work productivity and how they compare our in-office performance? That's a great question. What do you think, Dave, about this question?
There's three dimensions of a KPI. Do you focus on behavior or outcome? And you have to do some of both. Remote work is going to be more outcome than behavior. The second question is it short term or long term? That's one of the risks of remote work. Short term, and George said the productivity may go up, but long term, the lack of cultural cohesiveness may be difficult. And the third dimension of a KPI is individual versus team. Most remote work is more successful when it's individual versus team. So, depending on your job, do I have a KPI for behavior or outcome, short term, long term, individual or team? And remote work leans more to outcome, individual, short term. In person work leans more to behavior and outcome. You got to do both, longer term and team.
Wonderful. George, you would like to add something about this question?
Well, no, I mean, I agree with Dave. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems when it comes down to working remotely is, you know, is remote going to be long term? Is it going to be short term? It really depends, as Dave has said, on I think what job you're doing, rather than um, on the infrastructure itself. It comes down to the fact. I mean, Forbes actually carried out some research with Gen Z, and I think there's about 48% of them said that they actually feel lonely, not only lonely but also disconnected working remotely. And if you're working with a team, then you need that connection. So how that is managed, well, that really comes down, I think, to the organization itself. And every organization is going to be different. Their needs are going to be different. And it's the same with employees. Every employee is going to be different and their needs are going to be different. And it's really down to how you manage that.
Wonderful, wonderful, George. So many insight. Everyone is commenting, so I cannot, highlight each comment, but let's continue this conversation about another part about thriving at work. Researchers has observed that despite this, their higher engagement, fully remote workers struggle to thrive at work, with only 40% reporting overall well-being compared to 42% in hybrid and on-site remote capable employees. So the question is engagement enough to ensure well-being in remote work, or do employees need stronger workplace connection to retrieve? What is your thoughts about these findings and about remote work engagement?
let me just share. I printed that page. This was not set up. I keep many. For those listening, you must have to share the same commitment I do to Nicholas's daily results. I have a file in my computer of Nicholas's findings, and this one I printed for this session because at first it intrigued me because I thought I can see that the thriving would go down, and that's the mental health issue and the loneliness. Our work finds, and my wife, she's on my shelf. If you're seeing, she's not on my shelf. Her picture is of people I admire. She's a very good psychologist. She said we look at depression about the past. We're depressed because of our heritage. We're anxious about an unknown future, and we're lonely in the present. And I think hybrid work or remote work, whichever you want to call it, enhances that loneliness that George just talked about. Social isolation, and it's a dangerous thing. It creates all kinds of mental health problems. That's why I think the thriving, the 36 and 42% are tough. So what's engage mean? And it's interesting to think of what those two words mean. That yes, I'm at work, but I'm having the emotional and social issues. That's a form of thriving or well-being, however we define it. I think those are dangerous. And I think the need to connect with people is tough. Again, my wife says we have psychologists who work with the past, the depression, the future, the anxiety. Today, the loneliness is just rampant. And George, you said it very well, especially with Gen Z, who feel left out. They're lonely. They're spending their life in isolation, which is social isolation. There's some other great research, Nicholas. I don't know if this has shown up in your work, but
Yeah.
social isolation has a higher prediction of mortality than smoking or obesity or some of the other behavioral indicators. That social isolation is really a dangerous emotional state.
Wonderful.
I think there's something else that comes out of this as well. When you talk about engagement, especially if you're talking about retaining people that you've employed, um, a lot of, again, this comes from Forbes, and it was part of the same piece of work that they did looking at remote working, and I mean, again, Gen Z and millennials actually said, you know what, we're not receiving the development that we perceive necessary for career development. And some people coming in and starting work for the first time actually said, well, do you know what? We haven't had the onboarding that we should have, or the onboarding we had is inadequate because it's all been remote. We've not been able to ask questions of anybody, we've just been given a remote onboarding and get on with it. They've not been given an opportunity for team building, and they've not been given an opportunity to actually be provided with a professional network from which they can actually learn. And that actually came out again. It was almost 50% that were talking about this. So, again, it comes down to how well remote working is managed. And if it's not managed well, you're not going to retain people because they're just going to go, do you know what? Our career is going nowhere because we're getting nothing out of this. We're not getting the onboarding. We're not making the professional links that we need. We're not getting the mentoring and that sort of thing. So you end up with people saying, do you know what? This was not what I signed up to. And they'll go. You wrote a piece or you shared a piece the other day, Nicholas, that talked about the fact that people tend to leave because they can't get promoted.
Yeah.
But of course, if you can still develop people, although you might not be able to promote them, if you can still develop them and they realize they're getting that development, you can still retain them. But if they're not getting that development for whatever reason, they'll leave. And this is something, again, when you look at remote working, you've got to think, how are these people getting their development? And is it working for them? Because if it's not working for them, it's not working for the organization either. And you're not going to get the growth for either. And the two will part.
Absolutely. By the way, it's a good transition to my next slide, George, because it's about career progression and promotion and salary increase. As you said, exactly, that's my post of last week. Researchers has found that remote workers were the least likely group to receive promotion and raises. Only 40%, 54% of hybrid workers get promotion last year. This discovery is clearly one of the long-term consequences of remote work. Both of you knows that I love, looking at the what is, the long-term impact of any new trends coming on, because somehow it's, one shot, and somehow, it's having long-term impact. So the question is, does socializing in an office contribute to workplace success, or does it hinder productivity? By the way, one of my previous research shows that when you are coming to the office, you are close to your manager, you are close to your uh, uh, executive. What do you think about that, about career progression and promotion, salary increase? Anyway, any HR impacts, promotion benefits? What do you think,
You
Dave?
know, I think work in the office, at home, hybrid is really personalized. It depends on the job, it depends on the position, it depends on the work that's required. And again, I think it's the value we create that matters. But and so the reason I say this, if you're a leader and you're saying to an employee who wants to do hybrid or remote work, either one, what are the risks you're taking? What are the risks you're taking? And I think we've laid out those risks. You've got a risk of social isolation. You've got a risk, George just said, of lack of orientation, lack of development, and you have a risk of promotion that we don't know you. We only, in fact, this is the first time I've seen Nicholas and George, and I've interacted with them almost every day for 2 years. I feel, in fact, I was traveling through Paris about 6 months ago, Nicholas, and I almost called you because I almost said, maybe we have lunch because you're my LinkedIn friend, but I've never met you. And George, the same. By the way, if I'd have called, I hope we would have had lunch together in Paris. But to say to somebody, you're welcome to do remote work if your job allows it and if you can create value for a customer. I see that Nicholas just froze. I hope that's not me. Um, I hope I haven't frozen out. Anyway, I'll keep going. We hope that you'll accept some of the risk of that remote work. I'll stop with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. It's 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 a risk for anybody that decides that they want to work remotely, because then you're really looking at, are people able to develop themselves and develop their careers, and
I
that
yeah,
I think that can be a problem.
and that's not new. I mean, 20 years ago, well, for me personally, when I went to university and I worked from home, I wasn't part of the social fabric of the faculty. I'm not likely to become a dean. By the way, I consider that a blessing. I probably shouldn't have said that, but 20 years ago there was a lot of discussion about the mommy trap. Can we create work flexibility so women who have children can stay at home? And the answer is absolutely, in my view. We can create a track that personalizes the work for you, but it also comes with risk. If you're not part of the social fabric of an organization, it's going to be unlikely that you'll be as likely to be promoted. And I think that candid discussion is a very useful thing to have with our employees who choose to do and are able to do remote work. It's very personalized, I think. And Nicholas, I think your research really begins to show that. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. There is a lot of comment. I try, to read some of, to
I
select some.
love the comments coming through. They are so good. This technology is new for me to see those comments. Thank you. And the answer on socialization contribute to workplace success. Yeah. I mean, work is not just a product we produce; it's a relationship and process behind that product. And socializing is where much innovation occurs.
Absolutely.
These are great ideas.
No, wonderful
I
ideas.
like
Thank
this
you.
slide. I'll just comment real quick. I had the privilege of being on the board of directors of Herman Miller, an office design company and workplace design. The design of the workplace makes a big difference in our work. Are we in an isolated office? Are we working together? And one of the messages that I shared, and I'll say again, when we go to an office, if we tend to be a hybrid worker, don't do the things in the office that you could have done at home. Spend time with people, discuss with people, share ideas with people, not just politically or socially, but also to feel connected that you're part of the fabric. We're seeing workstations and open floor plans move very, very quickly to create floor spaces that enhance productivity rather than stifle it. And I think we're seeing much more of that as we go about doing collaborative work.
Yeah, I think one of the things that used to put me off when I worked in an office was where you'd walk into an office and you'd have two desks and there would be some sort of barrier between the two desks. Great for pinning things on, but not great when it comes to communication and collaboration because, it's almost as though somebody's put a fence up there. So, it's how you design the workspace really does have an outcome on, how good the collaboration is, how good the communication is, and whether or not people feel open to actually talk to people about things. Once you put screens up between desks and that sort of thing, it sort of says to me, well, you don't want me to talk to you, you know. So there's all sorts of ways that you can look at the way that the workplace is designed to make sure that people feel included. And that's very important. Inclusiveness is very important. Everybody needs to be included in everything, irrespective of who they are, what they are. It's very important. If you don't have that inclusiveness, then you're not going to have full development. If you don't have full development, you won't have full growth. You don't have full growth, you won't have the value that you want being achieved.
No, very inspiring, and that's the point, about the first slide that we discussed about Monday and Friday, that they are coming less, in the office. The point is that people are coming on Friday or Monday in the office. They would like, to meet each other, to collaborate, as you rightly said. And if these 2 days people are less, if I don't meet my coworkers, etc., what is the goal coming to the office? If I'm coming to the office just to be on Teams and to be in the meeting only, I can stay at home. So I'm coming to the office to meet each other, to connect with each other, right? So that's the point, I guess, that we need, and so companies needs, to increase the collaboration and, to attract people in the office. I don't know, what do you think about that?
And we need to come together. Again, some of these principles are not new; they're long term. A number of years ago, we were working with a company that did worldwide manufacturing and design. So you'd work in Europe, then the ideas would be passed to Asia, then they'd be passed to the Americas. And they had this 24-hour R&D kind of idea that you did remote work, but you were connected. What they found is that that didn't work very well unless people from those three different largely described time zones knew each other. So before you would have to do that, you'd bring those three groups together for a period of time so that there was a connection, so that the work done in Europe could then be transferred to Asia, could be transferred to the Americas, and vice versa. And one of the things they found is they were hiring engineers and scientists from the same university. So we're going to hire 15 people from whichever school, it could be Europe, Asia, or America. They know each other, they've worked together, and now they're going to be in three parts of the world. And so even though they're remote, they seem to have a common social culture. And the companies that did that well would bring those people together either every quarter, every year, so that there was still cohesiveness among them that made it work. So I mean, that's a principle that FaceTime is effective time. that we need to feel each other. We need to sense each other. Now, my children and the Gen Z say, well, we can do that through technology today. I'm open to that option. Somebody pointed out the other day the largest app in technology and AI is a psychologist. I bristle a little at that. I'm not sure I want a psychologist on AI when I work with a therapist. My wife bristles a lot more because she's a psychologist. But but maybe the next generation will have a different experience. But at least where I am, the face time, the connection time builds bonds that endure.
George, any comment?
Well, yeah, I agree with David. I mean, it's a lot of this comes down to whether or not people feel that they can be included in conversations when it comes to use of technology. You know, AI is great, and I can see all sorts of uses for AI, and we're already seeing all sorts of uses for AI. You know, but when people are meeting using AI for meetings, do people really feel connected? And I think that's the question I have to ask. And I'm not sure that always happens because I think AI can bring it, it's almost sometimes it's like a falsehood. You sit there, you listen to people, but you don't really want to break into the conversation, even though you've got something that you could add. And by the time you get a little way down the line, it's too late because the time to add it is gone, So, eh, yeah, I think it's how it's managed.
I think we can begin to connect, and I'm open to this through technology in ways that were difficult. For example, George, over your right shoulder are some things on your shelf. Is there something on that shelf that tells me a story about you? You see in my office pictures, and you're in my office. Welcome to my office. And you're not a voyeur. You're not kind of being inappropriate, but I think we get to know things about people personally. Nicholas, we know that you have a boring office, uh, but but you're not boring. But I don't know, George. I can see into your office, and I see the shirt you're wearing with the logo. I see the things behind your right shoulder that tell me a little more about you. You see people I admire on my bookshelf. Sometimes that technology can help, and it can help us meet each other in a nice way. So, but it also isolates. There's always pros and cons. So when I talk to people on Zoom or on Teams, I love to have them tell me a story. Tell me a story about something in your office that tells me about who you are. Um, and I find that that helps me bond in a different way. George, I feel over the last 3 years or 4 years, George, it's been a long time. I know you because I read your comments. Nicholas, I'm coming to know you through the research that you propose and your excellent summaries. Nicholas, I'm calling you in my mind my personal AI because you provide research that just provides a knowledge warehouse.
But
And
I'm
yet
real.
I'm sorry,
I'm real.
but you are real. And next time I am in Paris, I'm gonna probably
For
call
sure.
and we'll have lunch. And then I'll find out that you eat less than me. That's now obvious, given that we're both on camera. But that's okay. And I hope we don't look at work as a place. I hope we look at work as value we're creating for someone else. And George and I have amened each other 500 times on this. The value we create for someone else is so critical. This workshop. We have people I've seen from the Mid East, from India, from China, from North America, Latin America. Are we creating value for you with our ideas? I love to say right now that ideas have no tariffs in the modern world. There's no tariff on ideas. We can share those, we can move those, and that's what I hope this field is about: is generating knowledge wherever we work, office, home. There's risk and pros and cons of that, but wherever we work, those ideas don't have a tariff. They have absolute transparency, and we can learn by sharing each other's ideas. So that's the exciting part about the world we live in for me. That's why I really enjoy LinkedIn. um, I've written quite a few books, and people said, are you writing a book? And the answer is, I'm doing LinkedIn. I'm commenting almost every day. because that becomes a global network of ideas. And they, again, they don't have a tariff. They're not being bound by some political hierarchy. We're sharing those around the world. And I love, Nicholas, that you're really at the heart of that ecosystem with the research that you're sharing.
I was just having a little giggle there when you said about what's over my shoulder. I'm not actually in my office. This is my wife's. um, and we've thrown a load of junk in here out of my office because my office is being revamped and we're getting a new computer system in there, which we're going to have to do here as well because the computer I'm using won't take Microsoft Windows 11. So, we're having to change a lot of things. So I think sometimes, again, when you're actually talking to people and you see people online talking, perhaps you need to think, well, you know, do I take everything I'm seeing at face value? Because that's not always the case.
Thank you for the update.
And
But
you
yeah,
know,
it's,
yeah,
you know,
you know, please
I
go
think
ahead.
a lot of it comes down again to the way everything is managed, and if it's managed well, then there will be motivating factors, even working remotely. But are there motivating factors to come back to the office? Well, yes, there is. We've already discussed what they are. You know, and uh, a lot of it comes down to collaboration. A lot of it comes down to people wanting development. They're not going to get it sat on their own. They're going to get it through talking to other people. So, yeah, there's a lot to focus on and a lot to think about. And if people are going to work remotely, and there's nothing wrong with that because remote working works. We know that's been around for a long time, but we have to think about what do we what do employees want to get out of it? What does the employer want to get out of it? And somewhere those two things have to gel. So it's how everything is managed and whether people feel that they actually have an input into where the work is being done, but more importantly, as Dave has already suggested, how it's being done.
Absolutely, absolutely, George. We are talking about face-to-face collaboration, face-to-face, and it's true that we didn't meet each other, face-to-face, and it's very important also, in the work that we are in Teams, we are in Zoom, etc. But to activate the camera, to see the face of someone when we are talking about, because we are discussing every day, right? But we don't know after the comments that I'm putting, after Dave comment or after my article, what is your face? What is your human reaction about something we are saying? And always, with my team, etc., I'm saying, please activate your camera, because what I would like to tell you is about to see your face. If you sometimes you don't need any word, to say that you disagree or agree. You can just shake your, you know, head and say, no, no, what you are saying, I disagree. So this face to face, and you cannot see that. You can see with if you activate the video, but you cannot impose someone to activate this camera. And that's something that the proximity, when I'm coming to the office, it's something different, because the person, and I'm in the meeting room face to face, I can see his reaction. Is he's good or not? What do you think about the what is, again, the add value to being in the office and remote? What is your thought?
I think the chart you've got captures it beautifully. I mean, and it also affects training. A number of years ago, there was a big movement to do a degree, an engineering degree, for example, remotely. And there was this big push. What people have found is you can learn some things remotely in learning, and other things are really required to be face to face. In the HR space, we're building a program where we're inviting people to spend 8 days, and the first reaction we get is 8 days. Can't you put that online? No, because when you're together for 8 days, you're forming a team, you're forming a cohesive unit. Now, people may not be willing to spend the 8 days, but that's the price you pay for connection. That there does require some face to face, some real time solving problems together, learning together. The purely remote learning is not as sustainable unless you're trying to learn some facts. But it's that kind of idea that I think brings us both, again, hybrid, as people have said. There are some things you do through technology remotely. There are many other things you do face to face, and navigating that combination becomes a real value.
Inspiring, inspiring. Absolutely agree. George?
Yeah, I was just thinking there, um, there was something that came up on the screen here that said, does which was talking about productivity again. Does remote working enhance productivity? I don't think productivity, or it says, does physical office attendance actually lead to higher productivity? I don't think it's where you work. I think it's how human performance is managed. Because human performance, if managed in the right way, will enhance productivity. But you can't look at productivity on its own. So, does physical office attendance actually lead to higher productivity? Not necessarily. It depends on how well it's managed. And, it's the same with remote working. It depends on how well it's managed. You know, what sort of performance are you getting from people? And there is a difference between productivity and performance. Performance is, are they learning? If they're learning, are they innovating? If they're innovating, how creative are they? If they're creative, what value are we getting? What growth is being generated? You know, it's not just about where people work. People could work in an office, but if even if that's not being managed very well, and you're not getting the performance, then you won't get the productivity. It's as simple
I,
as that,
I,
in
I
my
would
view.
build on that, George. I think the first question that a manager asks an employee is, what did you do today at work that created value for a customer? Can you see a line of sight between what you did and a customer buying our product, retaining our product, using our services? That logic, in my mind, becomes more critical than where you work, or even if you're working through technology or not. If you're doing things that will create value for a customer, that's great. Now, long term, your ability to create value for a customer requires collaboration with others in the company because it's not one off. So we need to come together to create that sustainable value. But that's the kind of logic that I think is really critical. Um, I love this slide. And remember, I said I see these CEOs, some of them issuing edicts. Everybody has to come back to work. And my comment to them would be, where did you issue that from? Were you sitting in your office behind a desk? Were you at home? Were you on an airplane? Were you in a hotel? Were you in a and generally, I think we need to help CEOs understand that the value of where we work is not the place; it's the value we're creating in the marketplace, both with customers and investors. And if we can create that value in the marketplace, where you work becomes much less relevant over time. So
Amazing, amazing. I hope that the CEOs will listen to you, Dave, most and most. So my question, and George, I will let you. It's very simple. I'm sure that a lot of people, listening to us, have this question in their mind. Do you think that by end of 26, so it means that next year, end of next year, the majority of employees will return to a full 5-day office schedule? That means before the what we have this before the pandemic, or will hybrid continue to dominate this work? What do you think, George, and then Dave?
I like the idea of hybrid working if it's possible to do that. I mean, as David's already said earlier on, there are some instances whereby people can't work remotely. I mean, if you're working in a production department, you know, you might not be able to work remotely. It may well be that you're going to have to work, you know, on the premises where what the item is actually being produced. But if people have the option of working remotely or working hybrid, I would certainly go for the hybrid. And that's because you get the collaboration that we've talked about before, which often generates the growth and therefore generates value to all stakeholders. Do people have to go back into the office full time? I don't know. I think maybe, I mean, we talk about making the planet greener. Perhaps we could cut down on the amount of space that we need in the office. You know, if we're bringing people back, you know, just for one day a week. Or maybe we don't even have to meet in an office. Maybe we could meet somewhere else, you know, um, maybe go to a restaurant somewhere or go to a library or go somewhere that isn't work related. And perhaps by putting people into a more social setting, you'd actually get more out of it. I don't know. Um, but, you know, I can see good reason for people to work on a hybrid contract as opposed to going back in the office full time. And I can see that there could be opportunity for savings for a company by not having to have the, the large premises that they've had previously. And also that will maybe cut down on their usage of heating, lighting, energy as such. So maybe, you know, that would show a greener side of the company as well. So there's a lot to look at. I mean, it's you know, where do you go from there?
Fabulous. Thank you, Dave. Final.
My sense, and I'll be quick because I know our time is running.
Yeah.
I think all or nothing answers are not very helpful.
No.
There'll be a full return to the office. There's never been a full return to the office. I mean, if you go back 10 years, there was hybrid work before. I've always worked hybrid, and others have too. So I think this all or nothing thing is difficult. So I'm going to return to the two comments. One, I think we have to personalize what George you just said. Some employees need to be there. Some employees can have flexibility. And then I think that if there is a criterion, and we're now I'm simplifying too much, how does your work create value for someone else outside the company? And if you can demonstrate that to a CEO, I'm going to build a work setting so that our customers will buy more product, our investors will invest in us, our citizenship scores will go up in reputation. Here's what I think we can do that will make that happen. I think CEOs are very amenable to that. And that's a broader HR issue. I think HR people are prone to promote their program on leadership or culture or agility or staffing or onboarding. I think that's the wrong place to start. We start by saying, what's the value that my business needs to be successful? How will the work I do help that? And I think we're going to see that we'll continue with hybrid work. Again, it's not a new phenomena. It's been around for a long time. Flexible work, work-life balance, those issues get played out. I still don't fully understand the next generation, not just Z, but Alpha. I'm still trying to learn from my grandchildren what some of that generation may look like, and I recognize they're different. They've been born in those that were were born during COVID. I think as they get in high school and college during COVID, I think we'll see some different trends. But right now, personalization and value creation are the principles I would be driven by.
Wonderful, wonderful, Dave. Thank you so much for this, conversation that we had both together. We wrap up today's discussion because we are past the time.
Nicholas, I know we're past, but I'm going to ask you a question because I've not had the chance. You always share with us. Why do you do this work? Why
Passion.
do you do this work?
It's a passion that I have for HR and for HR data. That's that's the only things because again we have no sponsor, nothing, just by passion. I'm doing
Excellent.
this work. And thank you for being for your incredible insight today. Everyone joined today. We have more than 200 people joined today. Thank you all. Thank you for today's session. Thank you, Dave, for accepting this. George, accepting this. By the way, it was a Friday and the lunchtime, the breakfast time for you, Dave. Thank you for this incredible decision. Lunch and Learn returns every Friday. I'm trying, to have this human, connection with you all. To stay tuned for fresh perspective and insight. I encourage you to reshare and share this post in order, to share this incredible insight. Don't forget the session is recorded, so if you have, you can revisit insight anytime. See you next time. Happy and lovely weekend, you all. Take care. See you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Nicholas, for inviting me.
Thank
And
you.
Dave, it's great to meet you at long last.
Good. At last. Thank you.
Thank you.